Welcome to Hip Hop Now Podcast. If you're from the future, you know what to do. Get your ass out of here. Don't disrespect the legend. Hip hop is here to stay. Let's get right into the business.
What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast, a podcast specifically designed to keep you caught up on all things hip hop, music, and culture that happened throughout the week. Big shout out to the subscribers, first and foremost, in audio form, whether you listen to this podcast via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, or wherever you get your podcast listening. Hope you enjoy the program. Thank you for subscribing. Don't forget to review on Apple Podcasts. But also a big shout out to those who follow the podcast, subscribe to the podcast via YouTube. Yes, it's been a YouTube video for a long time. I know there might be some audio listeners who are coming back to say, what? You on YouTube? Yes, I'm on YouTube because guess what? You got to be, okay? You have to. If you're going to continue to do this, retirement is somewhere around the corner, y'all. I ain't going to lie. I can't do this all the time, but the channel is nice and lively, so let's keep it going. We were trying to get to, I think, like 15K. We did that, so appreciate you, but that is not the end of the goal. So let's just keep going to see how far this goes. You know what I'm saying? But speaking of content and reasons to subscribe to this channel, if you don't know, okay, we did last week we did a special review of the Clips' new album, Let God Sort 'Em Out. Shout out to the homie Ak who came through to help me kind of break down our thoughts, feelings, impressions about the album. And, you know, there was a lot to unpack because that's just what the album was. So if you're curious about my thoughts on that album, go check out that video. If you're like, man, how long is it? I don't know if I can watch all of that. I feel you because I'm like that. I'll just tell you like this. It is definitely in my top 5 of the year. Easy. But check out the video. Support the content. I'm saying, right? But now it's a new week. So with that being said, big shout out to hiphopdx.com, Ambrosia for Heads, Complex. Yeah, sometimes I check out Complex too, and a couple of places where I'm getting some of these stories from. Let's get right into the business though. So while the Clips were taking the hip hop internet world by storm with their rollout, with the anticipation of their album after 15 years, Let God Sort 'Em Out, and meeting the hype around this album, just celebrating Clips in hip hop. Drake was in the UK as usual, trying to cause distractions. Not saying he can't be in the UK doing a tour out, but what I am saying, or London in general, right? But what I am saying is we saw him do this with Australia when the Super Bowl thing was about to happen because that was the focus in the US in hip hop. So he wanted to seem unbothered. And then ironically cut the show short after the Super Bowl had came and gone, right? Didn't even fulfill the dates because it was all about getting away. At least he thought, getting away with his smoked out hoodie on, with the hood, with the bullets in it. So it kind of felt like, okay, here go my rival Pusha T, who, you know, they're not really going back and forth, but Kendrick is featured on the album. Kendrick is not really talking directly about Drake in his verse. But here we go again. Leading up to the Clips album, it was all about this Iceman album and a video and a song, What Did I Miss? And a show or tour in the UK where, you know, some of the stuff he was doing was, you know, pretty dope, but it was to serve as a look at me, you know, I'm still alive, y'all. Still got the smoke hoodie with the smoke bullet holes coming out on me, you know, I'm still alive. So in a lot of ways, he says this thing, and I would hate to just think, oh, well, that's just Drake's opinion. Because since this battle, everything Drake says is about acknowledging what happened. And I feel like, as a fan of Drake, right, all he does is make it worse for when we have to hear from him, see him, a new record, because he goes out of his way to remind us that he lost, right? In his actions, he reminds us that he's not like us. It's just not a hit record. He just reminds you of that because he keeps rewinding back. And some would say, why, how is this that, right? Well, for one, you're in the UK and you're saying, and he didn't just say better than the US. So let's be clear. He said better than the US and even Canada. UK has the best rappers. Now, that's almost like admitting, and not to say that's true, but admitting that in the US, they're definitely not feeling Drake in the way we used to, right? And that could mean, like, poaching what's happening, what people are saying, what the media is saying about him. Maybe even thinking about doing a show, but kind of feeling like maybe I can't, or I don't want to do a show in the US and it just goes south, right? Because the US is more likely to be in a situation where they're shouting, not like us, and they done bought a damn Drake ticket. And plus, GNX is still doing what it's doing as far as the tour. So it just seemed like he was making a statement just because of where he was, but also trying to take a shot at his biggest critics, which is the US, because we really have more of a problem with you filing a lawsuit for a battle. So now he's trying to write the narrative and just say, well, the US opinion is not as great as it was because they don't even have the better rappers in the world. It's the UK. Now, I took it two ways, right? Pause, I guess. I took it two ways, right? Let's just keep it what we're talking about. On one hand, it's like, okay, if he's comparing rappers of today, and I don't mean Benny and Freddie Gibbs, and he ain't talking about, I don't think he's talking about them. I think he's talking about commercially successful, popular, the most popular rappers, saying UK's version of that, UK's version of, well, not version, they started drill, but drill or trap or the style of rapping is better than the guys in the US. That seems kind of weird, but I'll get to it. Well, no, let me just say, that seems kind of weird to say because a lot of his contemporaries who he messed with, we're not just talking about the people who are against him. That's a slap in the face to a lot of the people from the US that he cool with, right? Like, that's like saying, okay, I'm cool with Yachty, right? UK rappers are better than you. He's cool with 21 Savage, even though we know his paperwork says he is from the UK. So maybe that's what he meant. But you know what I mean? It's almost like, okay, they're the guys who you would like to say the UK is better than, right? Who are your rivals. But then there are the guys who are from the US who you're still cool with, and you're saying that they can match up to these guys. Now, on the second hand, I think he was just doing what he was doing, right? He was just trying to feel the love and get the admiration of UK rappers because just like Australia, it's a safe space. In America, we hostile over our hip hop. So there could actually be no place he can go without some form of harassment about, the battle with Kendrick. And maybe that's bothering him in a lot of ways. Like, he keeps trying to get back to status, but he can't. And again, some of it is because of him. Some of it is like you're taking a selfie and sharing it with the world with your abs. Well, tell your core audience where you get your abs from. Like, you know what I'm saying? You just keep doing things to say Kendrick was right, right? And you do it in spite of, oh, he said my abs are fake. Boom, check this out. Even if they're real, at this point now, people don't care. They don't know because they feel like you've been lying to them about everything the whole time. And it's not just what Kendrick says. So I kind of looked at this like in one way, he's manipulating the artists and the people over there in the UK that were at that show who love him, or cool with him. And then in another way, he's disrespecting the people who he's cool with in the US in a lot of ways. And I think that was his whole thing about saying Canada, because it was more like of an opinion of like, nah, just on some hip hop, I just feel like y'all the best. It just seems weird because I'm like, don't you think you the best? You from Canada? What? I mean, I don't know. It just was weird. Now, the question before we move on is it true? It is not. It's not true. It's tough to say because if we're talking about history, the US is the blueprint for anybody outside of the US. It is the blueprint for what you do. Now, every region that developed a sound, that sound that was developed is their own, but there's a blueprint. 1977, all of that was in the Bronx, New York City in general, right? Started to spread to the West Coast because West Coast rappers have been on record. I've watched a ton of interviews where there was a certain time where West Coast was more about, funk and stuff like that. And, sure, there was a rap or two. And I'm not talking about those that emerged like Ice-T and all of that. I'm talking about prior to that, Ice-T, NWA, the West Coast wasn't known to be on something like some hip hop stuff. That started on the East and it spread everywhere. But every place has their own version of it that is unique to them that they own. Hip hop isn't only New York's, just like it's not only belonging to the US. So to say another place has the better rappers when the foundation's still alive and kicking, West Coast, South, New York, Philly, wherever we talking about, I need to see them receipts, okay? Because that ain't true. It's just not. And we don't need this fool to start things. Now, there was a little, feels like it, battle that's trying to jump up and become a thing after the Joey Badass versus everybody, Kendrick and Drake. Now there are a couple of UK rappers who are trying to step out there and challenge people, and Skepta challenged Joyner Lucas. Both diss tracks were made. Please don't make any more. And then some other dude was dissing Eminem. I think Eminem is going to clearly ignore this cat. I don't want to see US versus UK. I don't care. I don't want to see it. Because guess what? We got more bullets in the chamber than they do. Right? Joyner Lucas is whatever. We got too many people to throw in that direction. You will be overwhelmed. Shout out to my people from UK, but some of them don't even rock with some of this music coming out of there. So it's just a non-starter. And look who started it. Drake. Let's not feed him. All right. Next story. So the next release in this rollout from Mass Appeal, remember 7 albums from 7 icons. The first album to be released was from the icon, the legend, Slick Rick. An album that I reviewed on this podcast and didn't necessarily like that much. I didn't think it was whack. I just felt like it left a lot to be desired considering the length of the album, the length of some songs that were good, having 2 house records on there. And I understood the story, the connection with this album to the UK, and that informed, and Idris Elba, and that informed some of the choices, but it just didn't leave a good taste in my mouth for a fan of Slick Rick. It was just kind of like lackluster for me. If you dig it, that's cool. but there was just too many skips for me. You know, the songs that I love, I really love. It just didn't happen enough on that album. So now here we are in the second release from Mass Appeal from another icon and legend, Raekwon, with a brand new album called The Emperor's New Clothes. Leave it up to either Ray or Ghost just to have the Emperor's New Clothes. You know what I'm saying? It's like flip it like marble cake, right? Like I just love the way they just make things sound so bigger than they probably actually are. Uh, this album just dropped. If you don't know, my review scale is 3 listens. I just do it because it just works, right? First listen, I'm just impressions. Second listen, now I'm listening a little closer to the lyrics, to the music, how everything ties together. And my third listen is just to confirm my thoughts. And my thoughts, just for those who need a quick answer, is it's cool. It's a cool album. So the album has 17 songs, probably 3 skits in there, right? Clocks in under an hour at 40 minutes. You know that's my kind of album, right? I don't have a lot of time to spend with you, unless I really, really like it. So many notable features from Griselda to Inspector Deck, Carlton Fisk. I don't think I know who that is. That's no shade. I just, the name sounds familiar, just didn't ring a bell as far as music. Ghostface and Method Man's on here. Nas is on here. Marsha Ambrosia. And when I was listening to this album, I was thinking about a ranking of Raekwon's album that I did almost a year ago. If not a year ago, I'll leave the link or card, or there'll be a link at the end of the episode, but there'll also be a card that pops up, or should have popped up. You should have already seen it in the beginning of the show. But I was thinking about like Raekwon's catalog, and I went back and watched my own video to kind of get an idea of or refresh my memory on his catalog. And for the most part, it was what I thought. Most people think the only good albums in Raekwon's catalog are Only Built for Cuban Links and Only Built for Cuban Links 2, which is absolutely not true. The majority of his catalog is good, too great, and the classic. You know what I'm saying? There's really only one album that's like whack, which you know which one it is, Immobility. And then there's one that's okay, but then the rest are mostly good. I feel like this is a good album. The vibe is a legend like retired, relaxing, enjoying life, sitting back and reflecting on not only his life but his career, and that comes across in a number of songs. And in a lot of ways, those tend to be my favorite on this album because of who Raekwon is and what he's accomplished in his career, and me as a fan looking at him at this stage. You know what it's like? It's like uh, Nas and Hit Boy's Magic 3, right? When Nas turned 50 and this album dropped, it was almost like a boss celebrating his career and success and acknowledging this run he's been on. And that was one of the main reasons why I liked Magic 3, because it made it different from everything else he had released. And most rappers, they'll make mention of how long they've been in the game and what they've done. But to have an album kind of crafted with that in mind, that's the context you need going in. So if you're looking for Cuban Link Part 3, it's not necessarily it. But if you've liked even his last project before this called The Wild, it's a lot more like that and the other projects, like Shaolin versus Wu and stuff like that, where he's he's just making records, like, yo, I still love hip hop, I'm still making records and this and that. Now, there are a few things as far as the features that I thought would stand out versus those that I really didn't have any anticipation for, but they wound up being the standouts. Let me start with the bad news, right? And not super bad. It's not super bad. It's just a pet peeve kind of bad. Not Raekwon, Ghostface is on this album 3 times. That got me hyped because I mean it's Ray. So anytime it's Ray, we need Ghost on at least 3 tracks. Anytime it's Ghost, we need Ray to show up for a couple of tracks also. It's just they're internally linked. They're like the best unofficial group or duo, one of the best of all time. But the older Ghost is not whack at all. And I'm not saying his appearances are whack, but there's something lost in the nostalgia when his voice sounds completely different from what we remember. He's more gruff. He almost sounds like like when I see him, he doesn't look like he gained a lot of weight or anything crazy, but he kind of sounds like that. He sounds like husky almost. You know how Big has that big pun. They had that husky kind of gravelly, not gravelly, but maybe raspy in some ways. But you could tell it was their weight for the most part. Like Sean P. Like as Sean P got bigger, he sounded a certain way. But it kind of worked for Sean P because it wasn't that different from his voice when he debuted with Boot Camp Clay. But with Ghost, it's noticeable. And you know it's Ghost. And he's saying all the things he usually say. He's rhyming the way he usually rhymes, so it's still Ghost. But there's something left to be desired when it ain't Shonda in the crib with the glass on the table. That's Ghost. That's the Ghost we like. It's the same thing like if Westside Gunn's voice changed and it was a little bit more husky and gravelly. That ain't like I'm sitting at the computer. Like, it's not the same. He could say the same things, but it's not the same. But that's just nitpicking. I think his performance overall was decent. I really like his performance on the last track called Mac and Lobster. Of course, that's what it be called, Mac and Lobster. It's Ghost and Ray, So I can't take points off because Ghost is just getting older. That's foul. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what I assume it is. I assume he can't really do that high pitched voice because he would probably have to fake it because this is where his voice is at his age right now. So it is what it is. But nevertheless, like I said, performance was dope. Meth came through. I didn't necessarily like the beat that they were on, so I think it took away from all of their performances in some way, but still not a whack song. The Griselda joint. I need a Griselda. I need to not hear them separately. Like, can we get another mixtape album with Conway, Benny, and Westside Gunn? Because on this song, it made me miss that combination of those three having a verse. And Raekwon fit right in with them. It's one of the standouts for me personally. But one of the things that people are walking away with, Nas got busy on this album. He got busy. The song is, what is it? Amerta, the Amerta. Raekwon did his thing, but this is kind of like, if you watch my review of the Clips, I like Nas's verse on the Clips album, but I felt like flow wise, he was doing a particular flow that felt like he was trying to fit in instead of just doing Nas. He doing Nas on this joint. Like how I was saying in that other review, like, yeah, sometimes I just want chip tooth Nas. Kind of getting that on this album. And it's a standout record for sure. There's a couple of skits on here, but they're the typical random Raekwon, let's do a skit about this, because some of it I was like, maybe I didn't get it. Maybe the songs lined up in a way for some of these skits, but like he got a skit called Barbershop Bullies, and it's just random Raekwons just talking, right? Yo, stop moving your head. I guess he's a barber, right? Then there's somebody else screams something in the back, like it just was random, right? Then he had another joint, Officer Full Beard, which was funny. But it's Raekwon getting pulled over and all of that. And, he a boss. So, like, if you are familiar with Wu Tang and especially Raekwon and his music and his history of skits and songs, all of this stuff makes sense. They don't really have to tie into records. It's just it's a Raekwon album. Like, what do you want? What do you want? You know what I'm saying? But again, I think listening to this album, if you like Raekwon and you're not only looking for Cuban links, purple tape, records or RZA to be on the boards, which he hasn't been in decades at this point, and you understand that there have been good albums from Raekwon and Ghost, for that matter, without RZA on the boards, then I think you would like this album because it's a good album. Top five for me this year, not really, but that's not to say anything bad about it. That's just saying the songs that or the albums right now that I hold in the top five of the year so far. I just don't think this album is better than those, but I think it's good enough to be mentioned as one of the best of the year. So to me, Mass Appeal's rollout of 7 albums and 7 legends is 1 and 1. The word on the street is that next up will be Ghostface with Supreme Clientele 2. That at least that's the rumor. So we'll see. But considering what I just said about Ghost and my feelings, if it ain't Shonda in the glass house throwing on the rocks, like I can't take the gruff version, man. It's not gonna sound the same, especially being a sequel to his best album and one of the best albums in hip hop history, Supreme Clientele. But we'll see. What do you think about Raekwon's brand new album, The Emperor's New Clothes, the features, Ray, the beats, the skits? Leave your comments in the comment section below. And lastly, so we're going to try to be as quick as possible with this one. But an interesting thing popped up in my timeline. Also wound up being in a group chat I'm in on WhatsApp. Shout out to them. And it compelled me, considering I saw it on social media and I saw a conversation around it, and then it becomes a conversation in a private chat. I felt like, well, that kind of says maybe I should address it. So this is stemming from a tweet from, and shout out to Mickey Facts, who basically was reacting to a video of the rapper Murs talking about kind of breaking down hip hop and how we perceive writers, MCs collaborating on a record, and how some people view that as whack or ghostwriting, and question MCs as to basically question a pen game. Like, if you rap, you should be able to do that by yourself. You should be able to write that by yourself. You shouldn't need help. And even though I'm not going to play Mickey Facts' thoughts on it, to sum up his thoughts, he believes co-writing is fine if you're going to try to make a hit or you're trying to do a song outside of what you typically do that has a goal of radio play or popular success. But he does feel like if you're an MC, anything like that, album cuts, freestyles, in a cipher, that should come from your pen. So we're gonna play Murs talking about it, and then I'll just give you my thoughts on what he has to say.
I had a ghostwriter on my newest single, Gas Prices. Shame, I feel no shame or guilt. I don't understand why rap is the only genre to criticize vocalists for not being the authors of their material. I hope on my new single from a guy named Bang, artist out of Arkansas that I was mentoring and working with in my program, Waves. Yeah, so I sent him the songs like, I don't like my second verse. See what you could do. He shot me back something that was phenomenal. I took what I needed and I gave him credit. And I'm giving him credit now. And I really feel like hip hop needs to create a safe space for the writer. Okay, this is my guy Murs. Facts review.
So that was Murs speaking from his point of view about the subject, but also giving a live example of himself. Now, me personally, as a hip hop fan and as a guy who's um, dug a couple of Murs projects and really gave him a lot of respect off his pen, right? That's because there are artists who can make a catchy record and you like them for all the things in a record, and then there are artists who make catchy records and you're more focused on the writing. So you're like, yo, this dude is dope. Coming up with these ideas and the way he flipped that and the way he said this. But I have to say, and maybe this is the old school cat in me, y'all. I'm sorry. Maybe this the unk or whatever you want to say. Maybe this the old head. But that coming from Murs makes me feel more like you could have wrote that. You could have wrote that. You are capable of writing that. You could have wrote that. And I think like even him laying out the fact that my new single, I was working on it. I really didn't like my second verse. I gave it to a mentee and said, let me see what you do with it. He gives you some great ideas. You pull from those great ideas, and maybe you pull in lines as well from those ideas to finish the song. And you properly so give him co-writer and credit even in this conversation. Sure, I can agree with that. But considering Murs to me is not what you would call someone who's aiming to be on the radio, who is popular outside of the cats that do know him, the fans that do know him. I think he's more of a core fan base type rapper where it's like he got his core, that's it. And I don't know if his core would agree with him because at least the notion is if somebody said, do you think Murs has a ghostwriter or co-writers, it'll be a quick no on both. If the man didn't just tell you on this single, I had a co-writer. So I think it's two things, right? As an MC, as a guy who came up in the 90s where, writing your own stuff was paramount, you had to. Everybody assumed that was your pen when you spit your raps, and it better be. I never would have sought a co-writer. But as a professional recording artist, even if you're independent, your role is not only to make great music, but it is to make music that hopefully becomes popular and puts money in your pocket. Doesn't matter what you do. An independent business is not giving away stuff for free, even though you would like to think that. It's just not. So the same goes for being on a major. So maybe he wanted to make something that was better than what he was thinking, and he just needed some ideas and help. I don't think there's anything wrong with that because as an MC, writer's block exists. Sometimes you don't have the time to sit. Some people get writer's block, and it ain't just, oh, it took me a couple of weeks, but then I got it. Some people may have writer's block on one record, and that will hold the entire album up because they can't finish the album until they get past that. And sometimes you need someone else's ears to hear what you can't hear, to see what you can't see, right? To say, oh, well, why don't you do this? It's in hip hop, unfortunately, people frown upon even that much because they feel like you're creative, you should come up with it. But after you reach a certain point, especially when you're in the business of creating for profit, you can't really take those chances, right? Because so many things can go wrong. So tapping somebody for the sake of getting the idea flushed out or revigorating what you kind of initially thought but couldn't get out your system. Sometimes somebody can just say, oh, I listened. Maybe you should do this. If you said something like this, they didn't write the whole song for you. They co-wrote. They helped. And it doesn't mean they helped write the entire album. Doesn't mean they ghostwriting the whole album. But I said all that to say that I think that rule of, not having ghostwriters it just kind of applies to me to anybody who's really going to talk ish about their pen. You can't have ghostwriters if you're talking about your pen being great. You can't do that. Now, you try and make a hit record, and this guy has been releasing music but can't get off, but he's a great writer in your mind. It's okay to collaborate, to fine tune your ideas, right? Not to say go write my whole album and I come and recite it, but to say, let's creatives come together. And it's not uncommon in hip hop. It's not a new thing. When the rules existed, ghostwriters were writing in the background. That's why they were ghostwriters, because it was hip hop, and people were like, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody that such and such helped, because hip hop not trying to hear that. So his plea to move on, I feel it when it comes to having co-writers. Nobody should look at a co-writer as a ghostwriter or take any points away from an artist who's probably written so many rhymes in his lifetime that having a co-writer on a song when this man is like 50 or whatever, it's okay for him to have a co-writer. Ghostwriting is something else. Again, I would like to think those who are dope and known for their pen can even write hits themselves. But if you have somebody go and write it all and you just recite, and like Murs said, vocalists, well, vocalists and MC, no. Let's not do that. Let's not marry those two, right? It's either your pen or maybe you are just a vocalist. But being a vocalist sometime and a dude who can write it other times, it just seems weird. But again, I don't make music for a living. And in the record industry, outside of hip hop, this is commonplace. So is it time for hip hop to join the party? I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Do you think co-writing is a form of ghostwriting? Do you agree with Murs said? Like, we need to get out of that, artists working together means your pen isn't as great as we thought because you need help. Leave your comment section wherever you can. On YouTube, that's right below the video. That's going to do it for me. You can follow me on social media at Vegas World INC and check out the podcast in audio form wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe, of course. And right here on YouTube, subscribe, like, comment, but most importantly, share with people you know enjoy this kind of content. Until next time, y'all, I'm not a critic. I'm a fan. Peace.